welcome. Mr. Bowden.
Good morning. I was just having a few words with the police officers and thank them for what they do. Thank you. This is, I guess, the fourth or fifth meeting I've been to this morning, and one of the most important things I learned at the other meetings was about how much information the various agencies are providing to people, both on movable signs, and I'm particularly concerned because the new cars are coming in with iPads on their dashboards and people are not thinking and texting and everything else, but thinking about where they're going. I've had a problem with the lines on the road giving as much information to the driver as early as possible so the driver is pre-warned about what's ahead. Specifically the Henry Hudson Bridge southbound, you have on the left one lane for cash, separated by the same broken lines that through lanes use, giving the driver no advanced warning that this lane is different. It's not just the traffic engineers at Bridge and Tunnel, but across the country. And where do you start? Do you begin to use the same kind of thinking to present information earlier to drivers that the other agencies at the MTA use? Or do you continue to do it the way we've always done it? Because somebody asked this morning, well, you're not following the manual on uniform traffic control devices. You are absolutely doing it your own way and not following the book. It's somebody's responsibility to ask why your traffic engineering department is ignoring the Federal Highway Administration's Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden.
Okay, folks.
All right, we have minutes in the packet. Do I have a motion?
I move that be adopted.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Minutes adopted. Work plan, any changes to work plan?
We have distributed to the committee members the customer satisfaction survey for your approval and look. We'll be discussing it in the plan. Don Spiro will be presenting it.
Okay. Take over.
Okay, with that, I'd like to begin the session with introducing Jim Fortunato, Vice President of Operations, who will introduce some of our employees that have done some spectacular things at Bridges and Tunnels. So, Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Jim. I'd like to introduce Bill McCann, who's the Director of Bridges South, and there are 3 incidents I'm going to speak of involving the officers sitting on the side. On May 1st, 2012, Lieutenant Cheryl DeSetto, Sergeant Michael Chirelli, and Assistant Maintainer Joseph Bonamico are recognized for their efforts during an incident when an emotional disturbed person, a potential jumper. Upon receiving reports of a possible jumper, units were dispatched to the scene, and Maintainer Bonamico arrived and found a distraught man over the wall on a girder on the eastbound lower level. The individuals arrived on the scene, engaged the emotional disturbed person in conversation, and were able to grab him and pull him over the wall and back to safety on the roadway. NYPD ESU arrived immediately after the subject was pulled over the wall, and they were able to restrain him. The subject was transported to the hospital for evaluation and treatment, and their quick response and actions of this group of B&T employees certainly saved the life of this person. The second incident was on July 1st, 2012. Officer Martha Gonzalez is being recognized for her actions in preventing an emotionally disturbed person from jumping from the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. While on patrol on the eastbound upper level of the bridge, Officer Gonzalez came upon a vehicle, disabled, possibly disabled, stopped in roadway 3. the vehicle rolled forward from light pole 159 to light pole 153 and stopped again. The driver exited the vehicle, ran toward the railing on the outer wall of the bridge, and the subject began to climb the rail and had one leg over the wall when Officer Gonzalez was able to pull him back over the wall and physically restrain him. Officer Gonzalez held the man on the hood of the vehicle until she was able to handcuff him with the assistance of a passing NYPD detective. The subject was removed to the hospital, and Officer Gonzalez's act of gallantry and valor was performed without the risk involved and went above and beyond the call of duty. On July 23rd, Officer Eddie Fung is recognized for his actions, contributing to saving the life of an emotionally disturbed man who threatened to jump on off the Verrazano Bridge. The Verrazano received reports of a possible jumper on the westbound upper level and immediately dispatched units to the scene. Upon arriving, it was determined that the disturbed man did not speak English and only spoke the Cantonese dialect of Chinese. Officer Fung was known to speak Chinese and was immediately transported to the scene and became the lead translator for NYPD Emergency Service Unit. Officer Fung engaged himself in a conversation for 4.5 hours and barely had a voice left to speak with. Officer Fung was able to talk the man back in from the outer cables of the bridge with the assistance of another NYPD officer and played an intricate role in saving the man's life. Thank you all.
On to the festivities.
Okay.
Okay.
Move the agenda.
We'll move on to the report on operations, page 15. David Moretti.
Thank you, Jim. There are 2 reports this month. The first report is for the month of June, when we had 25,229,000 crossings, which is pretty much on par with what we had the year earlier. It also follows the pattern of the last 3 months prior to this, and from March to May, traffic was pretty much the same as the prior year. Easy Pass crossings for the month were up 1.9%. Cash crossings were lower by 8.3%. Travel by Rockaway residents at the Cross Bay Bridge was about on par with the prior year. Moving on to July's report, there were 24,864,000 crossings, which was a decrease of 627,000, or about a 2.5% drop in traffic. This year the weather was wetter than a year ago. Rain was about almost an inch more, and on top of that, the holiday fell on a Wednesday, which typically leads to a lot of people taking off 2 days instead of just 1, and so traffic was lower. Well, they took a 3-day weekend instead of a 2-day weekend. In years when we have a Wednesday holiday, traffic tends to be lower. Easy Pass crossings for the month were up about 0.5%. Cash crossings were down by 13%. For the month, travel across the Rockaway, the Cross Bay Bridge for Rockaway residents was considerably higher, about 6.7% higher for the month of July. Year-to-date, there were 165.9 million crossings, which is 1.9 higher than a year ago, or 1.2% greater than in 2011. That concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. We have the safety report.
The safety report, Andy Petrovich.
Good afternoon. Starting on page 40 are charts and graphs showing the 5-year summary of customer collision and injury collisions and employee accident reports and lost time injuries through June and July. Please note the total customer collisions through July is down 10.7%, and the injury rate per million vehicles has remained steady at historically low rates. And that for the employees through July, there are 14 less lost time injuries than last year, with a drop of 27% in the frequency rate. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
And we'll move on to the customer environmental survey, page 45, Jim Fortunato.
The following results is a summary of second quarter 2012 results. Bridges and tunnels striped 36,382 linear feet of roadway at the Queens Midtown, Bronx Whitestone, and Frogs Neck bridges. B&T repaired 857 potholes in the second quarter of 2012, significantly down from 1,798 in the second quarter of 2011. The overall collision per million vehicle rate was 5.42, which is 3.6 lower than the second quarter in 2011. The collision with injury rate was 49.3% higher than 2011 for the same quarter. The increase was greatest as the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge in the second quarter, and as a result, B&T Special Operations has increased speed enforcement and patrols at the bridge. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
What would be the reason for the reduction in the number of potholes? Would it be weather-related?
It was, yes, it was weather-related. That's in the footnotes. Favorable winter conditions,
Much milder winter.
and also we repaved the entire span of the RFK Bridge and the plaza.
We'll also point out that,
Thank you.
I could point
Yeah.
out that the greater number of potholes was during the LeBeau regime.
We'll move on to the Easy Pass performance report, financial report, and some points on the customer satisfaction survey, all addressed in this one report by Don Spiro.
All right, thanks, Jim. The June and July Easy Pass reports begin on page 55. For both months, our market share was up significantly from the year before, 1.7%, 2.5% respectively, which is the trend we've been seeing now for over a year, well over a year. Our year-to-date, our market share is 81%, about 81%. More than 23,000 Easy Pass accounts were opened in June, more than 26,000 in July, and that brings the year-to-date total to almost 132,000, 35,000 more than last year at the same time. About 13,000 on-the-go accounts were opened in June, another 15,000 in July, 55 and 57% of the total respectively. And of course, these on-the-go numbers are driven by the in-lane tag sales to date. Actually, through yesterday, more than 107,000 on-the-go tags have been sold in the lane since the program began. So that continues to be, a big success. If there's no questions on the Easy Pass report, I'll move on to the financial report.
I do have just a question. With the on-the-go tags, do we have any way of tracking their usage, and just in terms of what percentage of that are being used? And what extent?
About 75% are registered. We know that after they purchase them.
75% get registered?
Right,
So
so
we have
they-
any idea how much usage people get out of them?
Well, it just becomes a regular tag at that point, so it's hard to track once it's registered.
All right, thank you.
You guys deserve an A+ for Easy Pass on the Go, both for innovation and execution. It's a significant accomplishment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, the financial reports for June and July begin on page 65, and I'm just going to focus on July for this meeting. If you have any questions on June, you can obviously let me know. Total revenue for July was down about 2.4% against the mid-year forecast. Year-to-date, however, revenue is down only 0.3%, and in August, very preliminarily, we'll have a final number, a more final number next month, where we're up about 1.4% in August, so hopefully that July was an aberration as Dave discussed. Total expenses were about $4 million lower than the mid-year forecast in July, primarily due to lower payroll expenses. Year-to-date against the mid-year, expenses are about $9 million lower, or 4.1%, due to positive variances in payroll and also maintenance and other operating contracts on the non-labor side. I think all the agencies are reporting their quarterly overtime results this month, and for us, they continue to be positive. Overtime through the second quarter was just about at budget, and in July, we were about $60,000, 3.3% better than forecast, and year-to-date, we're about 0.3% better than planned. And our support to mass transit is more than $553 million through July, which is $14 million, or 2.6% better than planned. Concludes the financial report. If there are no questions, as Jim said, I'll move on. Although it's the last item on the agenda, we're moving it up to talk about very briefly the customer satisfaction survey, which I handed out. I'm not going to go through it page by page. If you have any questions, we're obviously available either during or after the meeting. So let me just try to touch.
1 second, Chuck.
I'm sorry.
Are occasions on at least two of the bridges, one's Henry Hudson, the other one was the Whitestone, where for whatever reason, and I don't question the reason, the police ask you to move to the cash lane side because something has happened on the other. But the cash lane side cannot take care, apparently, of Easy Pass, and so you have to come up with either exact change or hang around and delay people. Is that something that you think is necessary? That they say, we are not allowed to take Easy Pass in this lane?
The original concept of Easy Pass in dedicated lanes versus cash lanes was conceived back in 94 or 95 when we went through the evolution of Easy Pass. It was done for various reasons. The most notable reason is we felt that our customers should not be held up by cash customers, which is the reason that we have such a high market share, because we were selling really efficiency in having dedicated lanes for those customers that went out on a limb back then in investing their money for a ride through an Easy Pass lane. That's been very successful. Now, during capital construction or maintenance, or there are certain instances on the operating side where we have to move people over. Yes, there is somewhat of an inconvenience at that time for all. You could see it on the Bronx Whitestone capital construction, where your customer survey indicates that they were not happy with the results of the capital construction as it equates to their commute across the bridge. There are just going to be times where we're going to have to move people, and there's going to be some inconvenience. Okay.
I think what Chuck is saying is that you don't advertise it. It's just that you put the capability there for the occasional times when you do have a lane diversion like that, and then people like Chuck can zip through, and it'll just be a time saver all around, but not be advertised as a Easy Pass lane.
At the Port Authority, they have Easy Pass only, and then they have cash and Easy Pass. So every lane is actually an Easy Pass.
Well, I guess it relate from what you're saying, Chuck. I guess it relates to: is there any time in which an Easy Pass customer cannot go use Easy Pass in the Easy Pass lane? You indicated that there are, and I get the impression that you're indicating that there's not.
No, we never have just the cash lane open without an Easy Pass.
See, that's, I think,
There are
Yeah.
times when the Easy Pass customers are moved by the police for whatever proper reason over to the cash lanes. And all I'm suggesting, if you have the equipment already in, let it be used so that people like me are not held up, holding up the people behind me. Let them have Easy Pass and cash, which does happen as noted at the Port Authority, that's all. I think you have a facility already in place on Henry Hudson. I don't know about Bronx Whiteside.
You understand this point? I used
We-
it last year.
we-
Told
it's
me
on-
you
it's
can't
on
do it
order.
the same year.
In order to accommodate a cash customer and an Easy Pass customer in the same lane, there would have to be a dramatic shift and change in the way we operate internally. We have to do a better job of traffic management in the cases that you're referring to. And sometimes we're just not capable based on the circumstances. To go forward, and as the committee chair does state, one of the other problems we would have if we were to do that would be contractor maintenance employee safety. Because generally, when you have a mixed dual lane, you would have some cars that would stop and some cars that would not. You would have an officer or a toll collector extending their arms out and sometimes not. You would have officers and maintenance employees and contractors walking where they would recognize some Easy Pass lanes and they understand that cars would move through, and that's why we have the gates. On those lanes that are cash and dual, they wouldn't have gates. So there's fundamentally a lot of operating problems to do a mixed multi-purpose lane that at this point in time we're not really capable of doing, both from a back office and from a safety point of view. And that's why we're moving forward with the AET program, because that's going to alleviate everybody's problem, because everybody will be able to move through without the problems you're referring to, that there'd be mixed-use lanes, cash lanes, Easy Pass lanes. There'll just be one mode of operation at the Henry Hudson fairly soon, and we think that's really the future business plan for the organization in terms of operating. So it really addresses what you're pointing out. And I think the future really is what we're doing up at the Henry Hudson, which will answer all of the problems from a customer standpoint, from a driver's perspective. Because there will be no differentiation of a lane. They can just simply drive through a lane without stopping, which will alleviate all the congestion and confusion during accidents or really any instance, construction, maintenance. So we hope to address those problems at the Henry Hudson and move that program out.
Okay, so let me just hit the highlights, as I said, of our annual customer satisfaction survey. I'm not going to go through every page. The overall satisfaction went up significantly this year, from 80% last year to 85% this year, and it was actually driven by which is really quite extraordinary. The lighting, appearance and cleanliness, safety and security, personnel performance all scored very well, which is a testament to our operations, maintenance, engineering staff at the facilities. We also saw some big improvements on road signage and on road conditions, which we think is a testament to the completion of construction work. Also an increase on ease of crossing for the same reason. Availability of information stayed about the same as last year, 83% this year versus 82% last year, but those are both very big increases from 2010, which was when it was 67%. We can talk about a couple of those categories, a couple of those sort of attributes within information availability which we think drove it. The biggest one was electronic signage, and we talked about that a little bit over the past year. We've worked hard to improve the signage, the electronic signage at facilities, provide travel time information from key points to key points, and that seemed to resonate with customers as that score went up from 72% to 78%. All the other attributes in this category stayed about the same. There were no significant increases or decreases. And I should not gloss over the only attribute that scored really low, below satisfactory, was service value, although that did go up from 50% to 53%. And then we highlight in the presentation just a couple initiatives. Yes?
What is service value?
Well, it's really the cost of the yeah. Most of the questions are about are about the toll, so it's really toll driven. A couple initiatives we highlighted: satisfaction with the EasyPass tag swap, which is something that we report on in the book each month. We don't really talk about it much, but it's a huge project that we've undertaken to swap out all of our EasyPass tags. Over 1 million tags have been swapped out so far, and 92% said that it's either very convenient or convenient. So that's a positive feedback on that program. And then finally, we mentioned the on-the-go in-lane tag sales, and we asked cash customers if they would consider purchasing an EasyPass on-the-go at the toll plaza, and 41% who have not yet purchased said they would. Another 21% seemed open to it, either were unaware or not sure. So that seems to be that there's still a market out there going through the cash lanes that still will purchase these EasyPass on-the-go tags. That's a very high-level nutshell view of the customer satisfaction survey. If you have any questions, as I said, either now or afterwards, we'll be happy to answer them. Eventually, the more detailed version will appear on the web.
Quickie, do you dig into those the Verrazano Narrows numbers? I'm sure you do, but have you reached any conclusions about the kind of the spread between being in the high 70s and down from 3 years ago to in comparison with some of the other big movers? I mean, you're putting a lot of traffic through there, and
yeah, I think there's also some construction going on at the Verrazano this year, which probably plays a role in keeping that score sort of in the high 70s as opposed to in the mid 80s to 90s like the other facilities. There's major construction work going on now and planned for the future as well.
I do not think, if you look at the correlation of the Bronx-Whitestone, that's a strong indicator that people simply using our facilities do not like the inconvenience of a capital program. In the region in Staten Island, they do not distinguish between the work that's being done by the New York State DOT and MTA Bridges and Tunnels. A customer drives a region. And in that, when we give them a survey, they're not quite sure who's doing the work down the road. And there's a lot of work going on in the region, and we're basically correlating that to something that we see at the Whitestone. If people do not like driving through these capital projects, it's somewhat of an inconvenience. But as you can see, it's not that much of an inconvenience, and there is a lot of work going on in that region. So we're trying to make it a good experience. We've taken down the toll booths, which I think keeps that number relatively good in a region that is going under dramatic change for the better.
I think that's a great answer.
Let's move to the capital program status report. Joaquin?
Good afternoon. The report on the capital program can be found on page 99 of the book. Overall, regarding commitments, B&T remains on track to award virtually all planned tasks in our 2012 commitment plan, which is for about $580 million of commitments. In July and August, we made 9 commitments, cumulative value $54.4 million. That brings our year-to-date cumulative awards to $128.8 million, 62 tasks committed, and that compares to planned $177.7 million and 56 tasks. The most significant commitment made in this period was a design-build project for the deck replacement at the Manhattan to Queens ramp of the RFK Bridge. This is B&T's second venture into design-build method in the bridge infrastructure arena after a pretty successful inception with the design-build of the Harlem River Drive ramp connection, which was completed about a year ago. There were no major completions made in July and August, but year-to-date we're slightly ahead of plan with completions. We've completed $22.8 million year-to-date versus a planned $13.8 million. Overall, we are on target to meet all planned completions for the year. It's not included in the stats in this report, but recent noteworthy completion, as was alluded to in the customer satisfaction survey, was completion of the replacement of the Bronx approach off the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. This project is $212 million. It's currently the largest capital project with B&T, and I'm happy to say it was completed about 2 months ahead of schedule. There were some other adjustments to remaining completion and commitment dates shown at the bottom of the page. And on closeouts, we made 17 closeouts in July and August. That brings our year-to-date total for closeouts to $109.8 million. And unless there are any questions, that completes my report.
In what the chairman referred to as the LeBeau regime, you never completed any capital project early. Are you trying to do this on purpose here? Completing everything a month or two early? Thank you. But good work, though.
Tony Kessler, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. There were 5 procurements this month totaling about $7.98 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. The 5 procurements are competitive and summarized as follows. Starting on pages 113 and 114, there is a 5-year, 2-month personal service contract with URS New York to provide construction management and inspection services for Project QM30, facility-wide electrical upgrade at the Queens Midtown Tunnel in the amount of $5,749,381. The next item on pages 115 and 116 is a 2-year, 2-month personal service contract with WSP Cells for $1,293,683 to provide construction, administration, and inspection services at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. Under our project for concrete repairs at the Bronx Anchorage and installation of a dehumidification system in the Bronx and Queens Anchorage chambers. But please turn back to the table of contents on page 111 for item 3. This 1-year miscellaneous service contract is with Future Tech Enterprise to furnish and install Liebert batteries, including maintenance support for the uninterruptible power supply system at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge for $32,273. The next procurement is on page 117. This is a modification to a public work contract with Iron Bridge Group in an amount of $418,647 for additional work under contract HHO7, structural rehabilitation at the Henry Hudson Bridge. And the last item on page 118 is a modification for additional funding under a multi-agency contract for document reproduction services with Professional Reproductions, First Choice Copy, and BP Independent Reprographics that will enable Metro North and New York City Transit to exercise the 2-year renewal option in their contracts. Bridges and Tunnels requires no additional funding. Metro North's funding requirement is $200,000, and both agencies are under contract with Professional Reproductions. New York City Transit's combined amount with First Choice Copy and BP Independent Reprographics is $287,450. And this month, there are no ratifications. Unless you have any questions, this concludes my report.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Second.
Second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That
Other business?
ends our report.